what you do is you do a written transition. Oh. You do a written transition plan. It's usually required by age 16, and you can do them with your, like when kids plan their high school career, they do it with their school counselor and the student during like their course selection meeting. And then students that have IEPs or individual education plans. Oh, it's saying, oh, okay. Okay, sorry. All right, so yeah, so it's.
Sorry about that. I think I'm all set.
Okay. So this is transition, as we said, transition planning from high school and beyond, and can we go to the next one? It's for students, like I said, that are going to high school. The parents, anybody that has questions, we can go to the next slide. And if your student has a 504, it can be done with the 504 planning team, and that includes the student and the parents and the next one. And their school counselor, or the 504 team, which in some schools will be separate than the school counselor. And as I've said before, if your student has an individual education plan, the plan has to be done by 16. And in some states it's 14, like I said, in New Hampshire. So what it is you'll have an IEP, and then if you're going to go on to college, it'll change to a 504 because that's based on your education plan, and college is considered more your lifelong learning and plan. So in New Hampshire, they've also changed so that you now have to complete the FAFSA form as part of your graduation requirement. That just started this year. I don't know if any other states are requiring that, but that just came up, and I live in New Hampshire, so I just wanted to mention that. Does anyone have any questions so far that I can't see?
There aren't any questions in the chat yet.
All right, thank you. Switch to the next one. It's just, you're either gonna do a 504 at high school or at the college campus. You do your transition IP as part of your annual IP when you move from middle school to high school, and then from high school to college. And when you transition from high school to college is when you would take your accommodations from your IEP and move that into a 504 plan. And it's helpful to make an appointment at the Office of Accessibility or Disability. Different colleges call them different names, prior to beginning your semester, so that you can make sure that you carry over some of those IEP accommodations onto your 504, which is a lifelong planning process. And you can use those for your job also. So, and like I said, and then you'd want to look at, where you're at, high school or college. You want to look at the physical setup, what you might need for accommodations there, touring or exploring the potential site, identify barriers, stairs, ramps, and that kind of thing, and availability of stair chairs for emergency exits if there's more than one floor. If you don't have a 504 or an IEP and you go on to college, but you still need accommodations, you can develop one at the college level. You can go into the accessibility or disability center of the college that you're going to, but you usually need a medical note of some kind that shows that you qualify for a 504 through a physical disability or an intellectual disability or that kind of thing. Did that answer your question? Okay. And like I said, when you start at college, you want to make sure that you have that accessibility and that those accommodations in place, and you can always adjust that while you're there if you need to make some changes. And it's always good to look at the college websites, see what they have, also to tour physically also. There are a lot of physical accessibility requirements that the ADA has that you can look at to see how that individual college is set up or the individual campus of high school. So I think maybe if people just want to ask questions, we can go from there. I don't know if anyone wants to contribute to that or.
I'm gonna jump in for a quick second, Karen. Something that sometimes people don't know to ask for what is available is looking into things like our dorm rooms, especially for college, or if you're looking at like a boarding school type thing. Are the beds lofted or not lofted? Do you need to request a lower bed? Do the handles to open and close the wardrobes and desk drawers that they provide, do the handles to open and close that work for you? There are some schools are easier than others to like get these types of adaptations, but some will provide features where they'll change the handles on it. They have accessible rooms. Do you need to have space in your dorm room for a wheelchair and just your day-to-day? These are things you want to be bringing to the forefront when you are looking at schools so that you are given the adequate space, how far you're going in between dorm room and classes. What does your room need for you in order to utilize it? There are some rooms that will just allow for more spacing or have you closer to the bathroom, things like that, if you're not in a room that has a private bathroom. But always ask about what you need on your day-to-day in the accessibilities office, because there's probably more workarounds than even we're aware of that may be beneficial to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I saw the question about.
Also, Bella, do you want to speak a little bit about your apartment?
Sure. Hi, guys. So I was actually originally in a dorm, and that ensured that I had the space to move my chair around. The bathroom was extra big, and it actually had a shower chair attached to it as well. The only thing that I think I messed up that I would look into is I'm pretty sure I definitely paid extra for this room to be large. And I feel like they should have, I shouldn't have had to pay that extra amount of money. Like it was a need, and they should have kept me at like the regular amount as everyone else. But it was still very large, which was so nice. Now I'm in my apartment, and that was a little tougher. Like another advice I might give is to try to get a room on like the first floor if you can. Mine's on the 7th floor, which is like incredible in the sense that the view is amazing. But our elevator is also very old and is not always running. There was only once where I had like an incident of like, oh, I really can't get up to my room right now. And it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I had to call my dad. So, and I guess that also goes to, somebody had commented too about like fire escape. That would also save you a lot if you were on the first floor. I know for schools, they are required to have stair chairs. I don't think my apartment has one. Not that I know of.
Yeah, you should request that they get one.
Yeah. Yes. That's my other thing is like, sometimes you really do have to ask for it, which stinks. Even like I had commented about my accessible key to open doors to get to my building. They didn't even like tell me that. It was actually told to me by another resident, which is like so nice that they even brought that up to me. But I just remember being like, I toured this apartment in person. Like, you saw me, you knew I needed accessibility. Like, why was this not even like mentioned? I don't know. But sometimes it's like there are things out there that might not be displayed right in front of you. But no, it's true. I do need to look into that fire escape deal.
Yeah. I know that at one point, when I was looking at a middle school and a high school, they only had one stair chair in each building. And there was multiple wings and, so. I
Wait,
would
did you
able-
have to do that for me ever? I know, so Karen is actually my uh OT that I went to school with from elementary, middle, and high. And I feel like I remember that being a thing that you were like working on.
Yes, yeah, I did, make sure that each wing that had multiple floors had a stair chair and had to order those and get them because, the plan that they had for evacuation wasn't actually efficient at the time. So, yes. And they,
And just to, not to
Each-
cut you off, Karen, but for those on the call that aren't aware, Bella is, I'm just gonna speak for you,
Okay.
Bella is a quad amputee. So as a result of sepsis when she was 7. So then obviously the accommodations had to be made after and when she returned to school, just so
Right.
people have an understanding.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, having stair chairs well, usually they have to have, at least in each stairwell, like on each end of the building, usually there should be one, but, a lot of times you have to, check that out and bring that up with the, college. And the state universities, sometimes have more of those things in place than the smaller private ones. You really, when you take a tour and stuff, you want to look at, the doorways and all that kinds of stuff to make sure that they are accessible. And
Sorry, I have one more quick input. Another thing that I didn't know until like literally this past year, I would say, is accommodating. This one woman that I've been in contact with, her position is ADA coordinator and accommodations administrator. And
Yes.
she that I've gone to, like, anytime I've had an issue with accessibility, anytime I went to them for like, is there going to be a ramp for XYZ? And will I have access to, walk the stage and whatever? So there are people with that specific title that can help answer that.
Yes, yes. And quite often they are part of the Office of Accessibility or Disability. And they are a good resource for, people, and you should always work talk to them and see what they have and any concerns that you have about physicality or about, and accessibility, and even things like you can get notes provided if you can't keep up to write all your notes in your class, especially if you already have an IEP and that's an accommodation that you already some of those into your 504. You can take tests usually at accessibility office instead of taking them in the class if you need extended time and things like that. Stair chairs required for those with classrooms.
Do you want me to read that out?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I
Are
can only
there-
see part of it.
Are there stair chairs required buildings with classrooms on college campuses or only if a person requests it? Seems like going to 5+ courses per semester student goes all over the place. I work on a campus and don't feel I've seen many stair chairs over the years.
Yeah, I believe they have to have at least one in the building. that in a building that has stairs. But I know that a lot of times it has to be brought to people's attention to make sure that they have it, so that it would be a quicker, that people would have that access. Check. So I think
Did
that,
you want me to read, Nick? I know you had some specific questions. I could read those so that the group could hear
Sure.
those as well.
sure,
So the first one was, what kinds of accommodations are typically available on request for someone with a brain injury who can struggle with timed assignments and course overload? And I think you answered that, but I don't know if you want to just answer that again.
sure. Like I said, you can ask to have copies of notes. You can ask to have the test taken at the disability or accessibility center instead of in the class. And let's see. So if you have an IEP that already has some of those things in it, it's easier to put that into your 504 too. And if you don't have them now, if you can get them while they're still in high school, is a nice way to do it, just to be able to bring, you can bring a copy of the IEP, or you can bring a copy of a 504 plan that you have put together and are requesting to have transferred to the college.
I can explain on like how that works for me. I
Sure.
know for my school, they have like a website that has to do with all the accommodations. And like each semester I have to go on list ones I want. Most of them will be something like extra time on exams. So if the exam an hour and a half or something like that. But also you can have extended times on assignments. So if, something happens and you just can't get it done, you have that leniency. I think it also probably applies to attendance. A lot of people require attendance, but if you have that accommodation, it might be one of those like, oh, you can just watch the recordings if you want, or somebody can be there to scribe for you or whatnot. And then once I fill that out and submit it, I have to also click for which classes. And then email my professors saying, hey, this is your student. She has the foundation. I know any of the semester they get like a million of them at once, but that communication goes to everybody.
Yeah, and it's always good to check in with the professor after, your first couple classes, just to make sure that they're aware that was
Some,
sent.
I've seen a few other examples. One of them, it is common in high school and college that there might be really busy testing periods around like finals or midterms. I've seen people in college get accommodations that if they have more than one, so that way,
Yes.
especially if you're taking extra time, you're not obligated to be in a testing center for 3+ hours in a row. So you're able to reschedule exams as well as certain like assignments in other ways. There's also a lot of accommodations surrounding being able to use certain types of technology,
Yes.
whether that's
yes.
recording lectures. Sometimes there's a lot of colleges that will record lectures and make them available to everyone anyways. But if your specific class is not, you can self-record it, or it will be recorded by somebody at the university, or having technology that you can take photos, or some professors don't allow you to use technology during class, but if you have the accommodation where it's easier for you to take notes on a laptop or something like that, that you can always be guaranteed to allow whatever technology assistance you use would be okay, and the professor can't ask you to put it away. They also are required, I've seen people who sometimes aside from just notes, like professors may like verbally give out assignments. And I've seen accommodations where people require that assignments are always written ahead of time. So people always have like written materials, aside from just like
refer to.
verbal. So there's a whole variety of things that, that you can ask for.
Yes. There's also, you can, like, right now, the SAT is supposed to go online, but I know at one point I talked to the college board, and you could have a scribe like to fill in the little dots, but when it came to doing the written portion, your essay portion, if you had a scribe, you had to spell all the words and put in all the punctuation. But I was able to have them, which is put someone at a disadvantage. So I was able to argue that they should allow notes on the iPad that was not attached to the internet, and all of the punctuation and grammar and all that were all shut off, and that could be submitted so that it wasn't penalizing the person for needing a scribe. And I actually talked to a physician there and was able to get that approved. But now I think with it going all online, it should be, there should be a lot of accommodations that can be checked off right from with the case manager or the counselor at the school. And if not, then you can talk to them. So, and ask for that clarification.
And I think you touched on that, but there was another comment. I've heard of professors who have refused to abide by the accommodation. What are the steps to help ensure that they are aware and follow the guidelines? And Bella mentioned making sure to go to the accommodation center and
Yeah.
reporting that.
Yeah, you have to go, and that's for a dispute or anything, you have to go through that center in order to get, sometimes to get people to help comply with what they need to do. So,
And then Adrian made a good point about also parents, friends, other supporters can help make sure that the students' concerns are being heard. I think that's a
yes,
great point
as
too.
long as the student gives them permission. Because they have to have permission from the student to do that. Once they're over 18, so. I know there was another.
There was another part to Nick's question, which was what resources might be available we can ask about while considering various schools for wheelchair user, lower limb amputee, and brain injury survivor. And obviously you talked about a lot of that in your discussion. Adrian, I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on it, of how, like, just some of your thoughts of how you navigated school a little bit more. Or maybe even in your choice of school based on kind of being able to access. And then
Yeah,
also if traveling, I know you've talked a little bit about, you know, kind of like, if you're going to be away from where you normally are, what are you doing about your prosthetic care? And, or even Bella, for instance, although she's not that far, but even wheelchair access and things like that, or if there's any things that need to be fixed, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. So I'm Adrian. I'm one of the Count No Limits mentors. I'm currently I'm 28. I'm originally from Maine, and I'm a lower limb amputee, my right leg below the knee. And I chose to go to college in Ohio, pretty far away from home. And I knew I wanted to go to like a residential college. I wanted to live on campus. And I was pretty gung-ho to, like, I don't know, go somewhere potentially kind of far away. I will admit, I do not recommend this. I can say this with full regret that I didn't get accommodations in college. I had a 504 plan all through school up until I graduated high school. And I very stubbornly, like, just chose not to, like, work with the disability office in college as somebody now who's actually looking into going back to graduate school, I'm fully approaching it very differently. So I can share like what I did consider and what I would do kind of differently. It was so some aspects that my parents kind of helped me with as well ahead of time. So aside from having a prosthetic, being an amputee, I also have a congenital heart condition. And I know it's like some of you may also have students who have other disabilities or chronic illnesses or other things that you're considering in this. So while it might not be a heart condition, I still think it might be useful that things we considered was actually having both my cardiologist and my prosthetist help set us up with local like hospitals and doctors that would be my like emergency care if I did need anything. So I would still travel home for like my normal like cardiology appointments, or I actually still kept my prosthetist at home just because, you know, in the summers and like that was still my full-time residence technically with my parents. So I still kept those doctors, but you know, if my prosthetic breaks when I'm at college, he's not going to be super helpful in another state. So he did pre-arrange to like have somebody who would be like backup care for me while I was at college. We also arranged like we talked about ahead of time with my prosthetist, like when I needed stuff like new liners, for example, that I didn't actually need to like go into an office and get like evaluated. So we made sure that he had my college address, and he would sometimes do like Skype before telemedicine was like all the hype, I suppose. We were already doing it. So we kind of arranged already like what would make sense for my prosthetist to do from afar and what I would need if I had more of an emergency and had to see a doctor. Especially our biggest concern was really like a cardiologist locally, because that can be a little bit harder. I did go to a college that was like in Cleveland. It was really in the city. So there was actually a children's hospital on campus. That was where my emergency contact was for my cardiology appointment. I do think I was originally looking at some universities that were like in more remote locations, and especially not having a car. Aside from anybody's going to have like college health services, they'll have basic health services or university health services. But it was kind of a good thing I chose a place that has kind of more comprehensive medical services locally, and my parents didn't really have to be concerned about me having a car and like the ability to like transport myself if I did feel like I had to go see the cardiologist or something. So those were some of the main things, but we also made sure I was like set up with some of the basics of like how to care for my prosthetic and how to like adjust things if needed. All of that was set up with my prosthetist, so it wasn't just stuff that I like tinkered on my own, but kind of prearranged. And then the big thing that I would have done hugely differently is that I wish I had gotten more accommodations around like moving around campus. I think where I struggled was that I approached things as like, I am capable of walking up several flights of stairs, and I am capable of walking 15 minutes to class. Looking back now, that wasn't like, while I can physically complete that task, I was making sacrifices, like purposely not carrying my textbooks because I would get really, really exhausted during the day. And to go to multiple classes, I was like, I'd rather not have my laptop. It's just heavy and I'm sweating and I'm tired. And, you know, when I walk up the stairs to show up to class on like the third floor, I'm kind of out of breath and I'm focusing more on that than I am focusing on the class I'm taking. And that was really unfair to myself. And so I wish I had approached it more from a perspective of not just like what tasks can I physically accomplish, but like what is maybe stopping me from being able to fairly focus on the fact that I'm there for school, socializing, eating food, sleeping. And if there's anything that is making me sacrifice any level of that comfort to be able to focus on those tasks, then that's an area where I actually do have a barrier. So that's how I would approach it differently. I did lean on the fact that there's a decent amount of like publicly available resources sometimes. So aside from personal accommodations, there were, for example, like campus shuttle buses, and I would really heavily use those types of resources. So sometimes I think it can be mixing and matching, like certain accommodations that are really well fit for you. And there will be other things that are available to like all university students, and you can kind of learn about those and make sure that you're paying a lot of money for them to have them. So find ways to kind of capitalize on it. And those are the kinds of things that I used the most.
I
Just
I
to touch
think that,
upon, oh, go ahead, Karen.
no, go ahead.
Just to touch upon like the different doctors, this doesn't fully answer your question, but I also have found that a lot of specialists will keep you on even if you're technically a pediatric and then going into that adulthood, they'll keep you on through college. So like I went to a pediatric cardiologist until I was done with graduate school and my like clinicals and everything like that. So I was until I was 24 that I actually switched to adult doctors. So prosthetists, I believe, will probably work with you the same way. It depends on your prosthetists and different doctors that you see, but they might be able to extend that pediatric period. So that way you don't have to worry about finding someone new while at college.
One of the things that I didn't mention earlier and I want to mention now is, if, there's two things. One is FERPA, which is that once your child turns 18, unless they give their parents permission to the college can't talk to you because they're considered an adult at 18. So you have to kind of do some paperwork around that. And then the other thing that I didn't mention was vocational rehab. And a lot of times you can access that through your individual state while you're in high school, and they will help you with some transition things. They also might help you pay a little bit for college and help you access different equipment and stuff that you may need. So there are some resources that we'll share at the end that go over like transition planning with IEPs, the National Center for Students with Disabilities, IDEA laws, young adults in transition, what services you can get, and information for parents on voc rehab too. Every state has a vocational rehab.
I just wanted to add, Karen, that as far as the kind of parents needing permission, so both for anything medical, right? So for doctors, and then as well for the university. What my parents did that was really helpful was as I was approaching 18, I turned 18 in the summer before I went to college. We did like last appointments with each of my doctors, and as part of my parents were like ahead of time that this was our prep meeting or like our kind of prep appointment before college. And as part of that, we wanted to make sure we signed anything. They talked through that with me as well, like instead of just handing me a piece of paper. So I knew that I was like essentially signing consent that my parents could get so they kind of, which can be a lot easier than hoping that your child or student sign it when they are already at the college.
And a social worker, depending on the practice that you're at, if there's a social worker involved, a lot of times they take that stuff and like run with it. So you could always reach out to them.
So we had some few other questions in here. We'll just go back to the top there. One is, what kind of college degrees and jobs do people with major upper limb differences enjoy? And so that's kind of a broad topic, but Bella, who's on the call, is actually in nursing school and will be graduating shortly. So, but she had to jump off, but so she could talk about that. So I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to share. Or David, maybe from your perspective, if you're available to just talk about having an I know you don't have a major upper limb difference, but just maybe a little on the motivation side to
Yeah, I think
find what you might want to do.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm David Harrell. I am a congenital right hand amputee, born with limb difference. And I've had a variety of different employment jobs. I came up at a time that there was not as much advocacy for things. So in terms of transitioning and I would say almost like kind of Adrian and Bella and their responses, and obviously being a generation or so below me, and even their sort of frustrations of, I just wish I would have asked for things. I wish I would have thought more. I think sometimes we want to prove that we're able to do everything, and we realize that's a little bit of a harder thing. We are capable, right? I mean, our whole mantra here at Camp No Limits, right? There's no limits. We're going to adapt. We're going to do it. And sometimes I think, as Adrian was saying, like, she is absolutely capable of doing all of those things, but when it takes away from the real reason she's at this institution is her learning, and so the fact that she can make it up those 3 levels of steps and such, I think that's an important thing for all of us, as a general theme, is to continue to advocate more, and take advantage of resources that are there that can help us focus on what we really are there to focus on. In terms of employment for upper extremity, or there's such a variety. I tended to not do jobs that involved like in the restaurant industry. However, I was able to find a job hosting at a steakhouse versus serving at a steakhouse. Some of you may know Keegan Moreau, who has got a very similar limb difference to me, and she waits tables with the best of them, and she's very good at what she does, and so she's able to make that adjustment as well. So I think the biggest thing in terms of employment is to continue to have, either if it is your child or if it is you as a young person, is to go through that same process of really thinking, what are things that motivate me, and what are things that I what are the core sort of values I have, and what are the things that motivate and drive me, and then not be afraid to explore and not be afraid to fail. And I think that's another important, that's a lesson for everyone in terms of our culture these days. We have such this fear of, oh man, if we make a mistake or if we fail, then everything is going to go wrong. But it's just the path is going to shift a little bit. We're going to have to change and maybe move a little bit differently. And I think that's an important part for, hopefully, for us as parents and educators and staff at a nonprofit, as we continue to motivate our campers and our this sort of new generation of folks with limb differences, is to continue to know that sometimes failure is an opportunity to learn. And I think there's an example of a young woman who is a volunteer and has been a part of our camp for a very long time, that went in a direction of something that she found very, very interesting and really wanted to do. And it was very challenging with her upper as well as lower limb difference. And it became something that she was not able to find a path forward. So I believe what she was able to do, which I really, really enjoy and like now, and seeing kind of her social media posts, is she moved and found something that was a little bit different. So she pivoted and she found something that still provided her a sense of fulfillment, a sense of mission, and it just went in a little bit of a different way. So I think, and I think that position or that job doesn't necessarily have as much requirement of physical demand as perhaps that first career choice of hers. So there's always the sense of shifting. So I hope that is something that might at least help a little bit.
Yeah.
Also,
I think-
I folded clothes in a retail store, and that lasted for about 2 weeks. But they liked me enough that I just ended up I just started like putting stuff on hangers. I didn't have to fold after that. But That's just work on charm.
I did
I
see
was
there was.
never
a
good at
question-
folding.
Actually,
Um,
that was that. I'm sorry, Karen. That was a lie. I was very good at folding.
did-
Also, before Karen, just one more thing, just on that topic. I think it's also good to also consult even with your OT or, other fellow mentor too, is what the physical requirements might be for that task, or what, if you're going to be utilizing, one part of your body more than the other, what that may kind of cause long-term, just to make sure you have those considerations when you are considering that kind of job, or what kind of accommodations can you make to make sure that it's going to be something that can be long-term, and as much as possible to be as healthy as possible, I would say. So, did you want me to go to the next question that was on there? Is that what you were talking about, Karen? So Jennifer Maggs, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about this, or if you'd like to share for the statement for the FERPA over 18.
I think we might have covered it. We covered it well for the medical. But I just think a lot of what you mentioned about when you're 18, that parents can't, professors can't even confirm that a student is enrolled in a class. They
Right.
can't acknowledge that they've ever heard of the student. And so if your student wants you to support them, they have to do similar, just, fill out a form. That's all. So
Yeah.
it's helpful to know ahead, just like Adrian said, for the medical. It's less sensitive information often than medical, so.
I did see a question about scholarships, and also a question about what are good majors and that kind of thing. And something that can be helpful is contacting your vocational rehab organization in the state that you live in, because a lot of times they'll help the kids do a vocational rehab like survey to see kind of what their interests are and stuff like that. And also a lot of times they can help you find some funding to help with school, depending on the state and who you hook up with there. And
For
that,
scholarships, yeah, I feel like sometimes it's easier said than done, but the more you apply, the better. Like going to college, I applied for like a bunch of scholarships and I got so many more than I expected to get. And a lot of them just ended up being like the same college essay that I had already written, and then just tweaking it to like meet that particular thing. And a lot of times yes, it's a lot of time, first of all, like finding them, but also applying. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But if you can find ones, especially ones that are like easy enough to kind of just throw your college essay, you already did the hard work, just like fill out another form, it becomes worth it.
I also found it helpful when I was still in high school. Some of my friends like needed help looking for different types of medical-based scholarships as well. And our guidance counselor department had a lot more access to resources that like they haven't heard of, I haven't heard of, families haven't heard of. So I would definitely recommend going to your guidance counselor and even just asking them to help you locate resources. Guidance counselors in their office in general, between all of their staff, the teachers, they know the other communities and organizations that they may be a part of. It's a really good starting ground. If like blind Google searching isn't helping, they may be able to help you target more specifics.
I was just going to say that I found most scholarships directly through my guidance counselor at school. I also did a lot of searching online, and I did try to really hard find things for students with disabilities, which was harder than I expected. I will say the key word that I found more often than not was overcoming adversity. Many of them will not be labeled for students with disabilities, but they will ask you if you've overcome adversity. And boy, did I write about camp every time. That was my college essay. That was my scholarship essays. So that might be a helpful keyword while you're searching. And then my experience as well is that depending on it, this can be a catch-22 because it also costs money to apply to schools, which is like a really fun thing. I mean, you can get certain financial waivers for that as well. But that's like a fun little extra cost you get to go through. But a lot of schools will actually award scholarships that you've never applied for. So the university I ended up going to, I was awarded a scholarship and like essentially in the form of financial aid, but this is not like they'll call it like merit-based aid or something like that. It is not like a federal grant. So I found it super worth it to apply to more schools, and I was surprised by some that awarded me a lot of funding and I would have never guessed, versus others that let you in as long as you pay a lot of money, and we're a great candidate. So sometimes if you have the ability to apply to more, that can be a good way to see more options.
And on top of that, ask for more money after they give you whatever scholarship you get. So Quinnipiac easily gives like $5,000 more than what forget what they called it, like the presidential scholarship. But basically, if you like met a certain GPA, you could get this scholarship. But then if you're like, if you call, I think my dad called and it was like, basically like, my daughter really wants to go here. I can't afford it. Is there a way to get more money? And they gave them $5,000 more a year, which makes a huge difference.
I was also going to say, in your application process, especially if you don't want to apply to multiple schools like I didn't, then knowing ahead of time what the scholarships are that your school offers, the academic-based scholarships, and then when you go in for your interview asking about them, they put like a little flag on your chart type thing. I'm like, oh, she's done her homework. She knows that her GPA qualifies for at least this scholarship. They're probably going to be looking for that when we send an acceptance letter. I definitely was not shy in my application processing to be like, I know I did really well here and I should qualify for this. So don't be afraid to advocate for your kids, or also when they're on their own going into interviews, having them advocate for themselves on their accomplishments, because it's awesome to have that accomplishment and they should be asking for what they've earned.
Or even ones for whatever major that you're interested in, or do they have one? Sometimes you can look online, even if your last name is a certain last name, you can qualify for scholarships. It's, you know, kind of random, and a lot of times the high schools will have a whole list of what's available. You just have to ask for it. If you don't ask for it, then you don't know they have it. So. It's
And if
just
you have,
asking.
yeah, if you have I know someone mentioned a cardiac problem that they have. There's one called like Sophia's Heart or something along that. Use the word Sophia. They have a nice scholarship as well. It's not anything crazy, but that was one of the scholarships that helped me.
There's another question. Does anyone have experience with participating in college athletics with a disability?
I don't know if we, I don't know if we do unless David does.
Hi again, I'm David Harrell. I didn't participate in college athletics. I think a good place to start in terms of a resource is there is a camp called Nubbability that focuses more on sports specifically with limb difference, and there are several folks I think who are their coaches who have played collegiately in different sports. We do have a couple campers that, you know, wheelchair basketball has now become kind of, I think it's more than just a club sport. It's part of the university's athletic participation, or several universities are now doing wheelchair basketball. And other adaptive sports are becoming more available. But there are individuals with limb difference that have been playing college sports for a very long time. And there was a recent video of a young man who was just became a lower extremity amputee that went back and, you know, participated in his college baseball team. I mean, I think he lost his leg within like 9 or 10 months and has made it, worked back to participate in his baseball team. So so there are folks both with lower and upper extremities playing different levels of collegiate activities.
I know that UNH has a
Um,
Northeast Passage, and they do have a number of, like, they have sled hockey and wheelchair basketball and leagues and stuff that play at the University of New Hampshire. And they've been around for a long time, but that's the local one that I know about.
Yeah, and so Ryan Fitzpatrick, several other some of our campers are, I mean, it's part of, and Tim Houston actually, so they both are on some pretty amazing teams that are with the university. So that's pretty exciting. And then what else was I gonna mention? Linda, that's what I was gonna. Linda Reed, I don't know if you had talked or have looked into anything with swimming either. I don't know if there was anything that you've looked into for Emily potentially. If you're
There
able, if
may-
you did comment.
There may be. Guy is better at speaking on this than I am.
So for wheelchair basketball, there's 12 colleges that have full collegiate programs. Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing for University of Illinois. Tim is playing for University of Alabama. Matthew is being looked at right now by Alabama, Illinois, and University of Michigan is new to it as well. There are plenty of track teams, there's both ambulatory and wheelchair sports for multiple colleges. University of Arizona has a swim team this year, and University of Alabama should have an adaptive swim team in the next 3 to 4 years. A lot of opportunities, there's a lot of scholarship money. Wheelchair basketball is big right now, both women's teams and men's teams. I think there's 6 or 7 women's teams in college, and they're the big schools: Illinois, Alabama, City University of New York. So fair amount of opportunities, and hopefully that's how Matthew's going to pay his way to college.
I also wanted to comment, we have another camper who is going to college this fall, and she's going to be playing volleyball, but she's also been recruited for SIP volleyball for the Paralympic team. So she's kind of has 2 tracks, but I think she's a below the knee amputee. She'll be playing just regular volleyball at the college as well. So I think depending on your level of limb loss or limb difference, there's opportunities to compete with everyone else as well. But there are some pretty cool teams, adaptive teams as well.
There are also a lot of competitive clubs. I know Adrian just made a comment that there are campers who participated in adaptive athletics outside of college while attending school. I know near our school, I did an adaptive recreation program, and it was just a bunch of anyone from 18 to like 40. We had they did adaptive rock climbing, wheelchair basketball, sled hockey, and they made teams that then competed against other local teams. So it was more club-based and just kind of sign on. So you're not directly through to school, but if you're just looking for like team organization and recreation and programming that you can be a part of, a lot of local communities will have their own like adult leagues and competitive leagues to sign up for and be a part of. And then they travel and compete and do all sorts of different adaptive recreation.
If anyone else has any questions or anything they want to add, feel free to just jump in too. You don't have to be shy. You can just jump in and chat too if you want. If there's any other topics that you wanted to ask about. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is recorded. I did put the links, the resources in there. But then again, we will share this, and we can share the PowerPoint as well, if you would like. Thanks, everyone. If you haven't signed up for camp and you're planning to come hang out or volunteer. We'll put a plug. Now I wonder if I can stop recording.